this up the way that you do it. Now, when you think about people that are typically starting businesses, you've got somebody that's working 70 or 80 hours a week, probably has a family commitment to go home to after that. That doesn't leave a lot of spare time for that person to go out and say, all right, well, who's this resource provider? And we've got a lot of them in the Columbia area. Who's this resource provider that can help me with the financing, that can sit down with me about my business plan, that can help me work on marketing? I think, you know, at the Office of Economic Development, we really try to like talk with people when they've got a concept for starting up, because we want them to think the idea all the way through before they embark on it. And I think that that's a large part of it is we can do a lot better job of hand-holding people and making sure that they're set up for a long-term success when they get ready to open a business.
So we've taken, the takeaway from this, I heard 2 solutions to the problem of minority businesses growing and flourishing. 1, we need to do a better job of getting the information out to them where they can be trained to be successful business owners. Another is I heard that the business owners or the minority prospective business owners need to do a better job of research themselves. Okay. Let's move on to, you want to, Lee has a comment?
I just want to mention too is, number 1, it starts at the top. None of this matters unless we have a commitment from the top. For instance, my good friend here over in Michigan County, you've heard a lot about the penny tax, the penny tax, the penny tax. Well, that was a chamber program that got that thing going. And what we are doing now is kind of, not necessarily holding the feet to the fire, but to make sure that small and minority businesses get a piece of the action. You're talking the next 20 years, that's going to be millions and millions of dollars being spent. Same thing with the City of Columbia. I serve on the Mayor's Advisory Council to make sure that that happens. Matter of fact, we'll be meeting Thursday. So what I'm saying is, until such time you get a commitment from the top, and that holds true for all larger businesses. If they make a commitment that small and minority business will flourish and prosper, they will.
Do we have a commitment, such a commitment? Talking, you brought up the penny tax. Talking about the penny tax, do we have a commitment that small minority businesses will be able to participate and get part of the pie, as you speak? And where is it written? And is there a report on it?
What's a minority business?
Well, I'll get it back to you, but he brought up something. I chair the, well, soon will be chairing the Richland Library Board. And we have a $59 million construction renovation budget. And we went out of our way to invite minority and small business owners to seminars to know what kind of contract were coming their way, so they would know. And we had several different sessions, so we're making it as available as we can, at least on that side. So that's just one part. So that's for the library. You were talking about the penny tax. I'll let you finish that part of it.
Well, actually, my colleague is more qualified since he works for the county.
Oh, I would say absolutely the county is committed to minority participation, minority and small business participation in penny programs. Part of that is reflected in the creation of the Office of Small Business Opportunities, which the goal there is to identify those companies that could work on these projects and help them to be able to, again, use the word opportunity, to participate in those opportunities as they come up. I think sometimes small businesses and minority businesses feel disconnected from that process, and so their role is to make that connection for them, make them aware of what it would take to participate. And so I would say absolutely the county is wanting to emphasize that participation. Would it help with some of the perception, negative perception, if there was a report card that said X amount of minorities applied, X amount of minorities was accepted, or dollar level, some sort of report card, so that the minority population feel like they did have a say, they did participate. Now it's their fault if they didn't qualify, and those are documented, that they reached all the hurdles. But it would be good to know that minority businesses are participating, because the perception is that they're not getting a fair share. And if perception becomes reality. and I don't want to speak for the county as a whole.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think that would be ideal to be able to say on an annual basis or some amount of time, but, you know, this is where the money's being spent. And I believe there is an annual state of the penny. Again, I'm not involved in it, so I don't want to say that it definitely happens, but I do believe there's that reporting mechanism in place.
Thank you. And I think the same with the public library, because that's tax dollars as well.
Yeah, and county council asked us about that, so there is a report we'll be getting back. We'll be getting, we haven't spent it yet, so we're in the process of spending it, but they asked us about it, our outreach to, they asking us to report of the library, the county council is asking us to report back to them on that, so we will, and we want to. I mean, we were doing this even before there was any issue there. We wanted to do that and try to make sure that as many minority and small business owners as possible could participate in the process. And you know, you look at the convention center, there's a lot of minority and small business participation there. Whether people believe it or not, it's there. So even though the perception may not be there, that is there, it's oftentimes there. Could it be more? Yes. Yeah, it could be more. What's going to take us some of the things that we're talking about here in terms of getting people trained so that they're competitive in some of the, and providing some of the services that are truly in need by these larger companies or larger entities when they're doing this.
I'm going to change subjects now, and I want to talk about it, Matt, from the city perspective, from businesses in downtown Columbia to businesses and all over the city and businesses in Richland County. Talking about perception. The perception is that businesses don't want to move to South Carolina, and businesses don't want to move to the Midlands for various reasons. Education, the negative publicity on our educational system, that maybe minorities are not welcome, so Fortune 500, Fortune 50 companies stay away. I would like to hear from you. Is that just perception, or have you come across situations where businesses have said, I'm not coming there for a particular reason? Matt, let's start with you.
Thank you, and Emery, let me again thank you for bringing this group together, because I think awareness of these issues is the first step to solving them. But I've never come across a situation where a company that I know of has not located there before this reason. But I have had companies, in fact, I probably shouldn't name them, but we had a very prominent retail business that located downtown a few years ago that was long sought after, and it was a lot of work, and the city and the county were involved in helping make that happen. But there was the question from that company at the end. They studied the economics, they studied the demographics, they looked at the zoning and those kind of things that Ryan said, but they weren't sure that they wanted to be in this community. They asked that question. We're just not sure if we're the right company for this community. And we actually, with the involvement of some of the people in this room, spent an entire day visiting the leadership of the community. It was the Chamber of Commerce, the university, neighborhood leaders, many others, just to let them know that we were a cooperative community. We were a progressive community. We cared about families. We cared about employees and those kind of things. But there was, to answer your question, there was the question from this company. They did locate here, and it's been very successful, but there was that question. So if they asked the question, there's probably a number of other companies that may not have asked the question, but did not locate here. So I think that's a very fair question, but they did have that, and we were able to address it.
Right.
Thinking about it, you know, maybe historically South Carolina has been considered a place where businesses did not want to relocate to. This year, for the third year in a row, we've had over $5 million worth of investment announced in this state, courtesy of our South Carolina Department of Commerce. Our state is pretty hot right now.
as far as a location for people to do business. I think there has historically been a negative perception of our state. I think that attitude is changing. I think people are starting to realize that South Carolina is a good value state. Two of the main things that companies are going to look at when they're deciding whether to relocate somewhere is location. Is the location advantageous to us? I think here it is. We've got a great port system. We've got good infrastructure across the state for transporting goods. We can make that case all day. The other major thing is workforce. We've got great people in the state. South Carolina has always been a state full of hardworking people. And I think people are really kind of starting to understand, just the quality and the level of people that we have here and the commitment that we have to doing a good job. So I'm not going to say that hasn't been the case in the past, but I think we are doing a better job of selling ourselves now, and that people have a better understanding of what South Carolina has to offer.
I would certainly agree that in the past, we may have dealt with perception issues, especially around the education system. And I would also agree that that is changing. South Carolina definitely is on a hot streak in terms of recruiting new companies to the state. And the perception of the education system, I think, is changing too. When you can build a BMW, when you can build a Boeing airplane, and now when you will be building Volvos, that cannot be done with a state full of ignorant people. And so I think those perceptions over time will change, partly because of the success we've had. And we travel around trying to recruit new companies here. When you throw out world-class names like that, it gets people's attention. Those are companies that just will not locate anywhere. They have a brand to protect, and they're not just going to make irrational decisions. They're based on sound business principles. And the key to it is that they've got to make sure that they have a workforce that can deliver their product and deliver it well. And so you cannot do that just by simply retraining people. You have to have a sound educational system to produce those people. You can't bring them all in from other parts of the country, although that's certainly part of it, especially on more technical jobs. So there is this, I think, changing of perception of the education system. It's probably not across the board and everywhere, but it's definitely a move in the right direction. And I think the recent success will help continue changing that perception.
Anyone else like to comment?
Well, let's be real, folks. When companies are looking to relocate, believe it or not, they look at how well you treat your poor and your dispossessed, your homeless population. They look at stuff like that because their thing is it going to be good for me to come here, put my business here, when we have these kinds of issues? They look at the social climate. And our job is to create an atmosphere and a climate that's good for business. And when you have some ongoing problems, even with the flag, everybody talked about the flag, that was a major hindrance, at least conversationally anyway. Now that the flag's down, we can be about moving on. But they look at holistically at a community before they invest millions and millions of dollars. And a big piece of that is how well you treat your poor and disadvantaged, and particularly the homeless.
Speaking, Brian, did you want to comment? Well, speaking about homeless, Matt, you see a lot of them. They're downtown. What impact is that having on business, you believe, in the city center? And what can we do about it?
Well, I think it has had an impact on business over a long period of time in our city. I mean, certainly, we are the state capital. We are the central point of the state. All the roads, we're the center of the state. And I think as the state capital, there's an obligation to take care of everybody, including the homeless. And it has, in my opinion, it has gotten better. There's still a lot of work to be done, but there are organizations, almost too many to name, that are working together. The United Way, Transitions, the city, the county, mental health, on and on and on. The various missions in town, faith-based and non-faith-based organizations. But I think it really relates back to a comment that was made a few minutes ago, is I think there is an obligation to take care of everybody. And most of the homeless, one statistic that I'd like to mention is these aren't, for the most part, these aren't people from out of state or even out of town. These are people that are from Richland and Lexington counties, and they're citizens just like us. Most of them do work. Many of them, there is the minimum wage issue that's out there that, that people are often now are not paid a living wage, so they may be working every day but still be homeless. So that is an issue to get the living wage where people can pull themselves out of homelessness. There are educational issues, there are health issues, very complicated, but I think we are making progress, and I think that I think it is fair to say, and I am on the Transitions Board of Directors, and I think I can say this, is progress has been made. I mean, just in that one organization, there are about 2,000 people since they've been open that have had positive outcomes. There's several hundred now that are in housing that were on the streets before, and that's just one organization of many. The most recent United Way count said the number of homeless in our community is down, and it was down last year too. So, progress is being made. We have a long way to go, but I think there is a corporate and a social obligation to take care of our own, and we need to keep at it.
You talked about the minimum wage and having a living wage, the difference between minimum wage and living wage. And up until recently, and maybe that is still what's going on, but businesses from up north came to the South, particularly South Carolina, because we paid low wages. So we got an influx of businesses because we paid low wages, they can cut their costs. Is that still going on? And what would the city or county, and you may not be able to answer this, but if you have some comments on it, I'd like to hear it. I see a council member at the back of the room. We may get a council member involved in the discussion.
You got a 7 o'clock meeting you got to get to.
What impact does paying the minimum wage now, is that still viable? Is that still a problem where businesses come here because we are willing to pay our people less than they're paid elsewhere? I'll start with you, Ryan. And then I'll start with the two economic developers.
Wow, thanks, you really softballed that one there. The reports are out there, the studies are out there. Minimum wage just doesn't cut it anymore. It may cut it for a company's bottom line, but at the end of the day, you factor in a family, we'll say 4, you've got 2 parents working, both making minimum wage. Soon, child care will just eat up your minimum wage these days. And that'll just eat up an entire paycheck on its own. And now you've got to take minimum wage and stretch it out over your monthly rent, your food expenses. It's just not, it's not feasible anymore to get by on that. Other than, and if you do, you've got 2 parents working 2 jobs each. So you've got parents that are working 70, 80 hours a week. And now you've got kids that are home that don't have the parental support. So you just can't do it anymore. The numbers don't work, the math doesn't work, the studies are out there. If you want good quality employees, I'm kind of the notion, if you want good quality people working for you, then you take care of your people, and the people will take care of you. And I think that boils down to making sure that your people have enough money to get by, that they have your support, that you're making sure they're trained, properly prepared for their job, that they're taken care of, and that they're doing enough of a good job so that they can take care of their families. And I believe if you do that for your people, then people will do right by you. So, if the wage rates need to come up, then that's what needs to happen. But the numbers don't lie.
Do you hear of, or do you perceive that there are businesses still coming to South Carolina, locating here, because they can get 50% sometimes across the board in savings on wages?
I haven't seen it as much. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but that's less of a factor of conversations that we have these days. People are really asking, how are the people down there? Are they quality people? Can they give me what I want from, like, if I put them in my workforce, can they do the job that I need them to do? We don't have those conversations where most of the time they're factoring our wage across, what they may be paying in another region of the country. I don't think businesses are looking to come to South Carolina just so they can shortchange us. I'll put it that way.
Nelson?
Well, I think there is a perception that in the past, the state was selling itself as a low-wage location. Those days are long gone. We cannot compete with other countries that pay pennies on the dollar. So those type of jobs are not here anymore. And we would be doing a disservice to our citizens if we were still selling ourselves in that way. When a company comes in, if their main goal is simply to cut their wages from where they're paying elsewhere, that is not someone that we're terribly interested in. Matter of fact, we have never worked a company where the minimum wage is even entered into a discussion. Because, again, those are not the type of jobs that we're interested in bringing to this community. And keep in mind, on the county level in our office, we typically work with manufacturing companies, distribution companies, office-related, whether it's a call center or back office IT. So we don't deal in the retail restaurant business, where you typically see some of these lower wages. Those jobs follow the type of companies that we recruit. But in all our discussions, we're talking about trying to bring higher wage jobs. Now, can they pay lower wages than, say, New York? Absolutely. But you can also live a lot comfortably on a lot less here. Because when we look at, okay, so you pay 85% wages here versus the national average. But the cost of living here is close to 85%. So while they may be paying lower wages, the cost to live here goes a lot further. And so that's an important component. What we're selling is not a low wage, but a low cost of doing business. And that could include wages, that could include taxes, that include construction costs, utilities, but it's a total picture, not just one component of it.
Thank you. Yes.
The issue of minimum wage kind of covers over the fact that there have been tremendous pressures on wages in this country for the last 30 years. And that's been hollowing out the middle class. And you've seen it in lots of ways. I know when I started my work career with Alcoa, they were talking about healthcare. I remember this, and I know it was a long time ago, but it wasn't that long ago. But the monthly premium for my family insurance, because we were pushing the health maintenance, the HMOs at the time, was $11 a month. And now you could be looking at $500 a month to insure a family for medical care. So where you have these wage pressures that are taking effect on a lot of people, you also have other costs that's associated with it. So people are really feeling this pressure from the top, which factors back into the educational issues, because the higher your educational level, the more money you can make, and you can shield yourself from some of that. But at the lower end of it, you can't shield yourself from that, and it really hits them hard at that level. So is it minimum wage? I don't think that's the big issue anymore. We're certainly not the state that once was, because as you say, we can't build. I worked in an airplane factory years ago. We can't have a workforce that's able to build these Boeing planes, and I fly on them, and they be not quality people. But we really still do have a problem with wage pressure, and it's really impacting the people on the low moderate income and work side.
Thank you. I want to allow some time for, the time's gone by really, really fast, but I want to take some questions from the audience. But you make your questions very succinct so that we can get more questions in and your answers succinct. I'd appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
How does unionization figure in the state of South Carolina?
I'm sorry, please. Unionization. The economic development, gentlemen, how does that figure into South Carolina?
Well, one of the things that we tout in South Carolina is a low unionization rate. And it's primarily because of the flexibility that our citizens offer companies. So in the past, I think companies have looked at the South in particular to find a workforce that they can train, cross-train, and be very flexible without having third-party representation. So that is one of our selling points in the South. That's why you're seeing a lot of the automakers putting major facilities here. And because I think in general, Southern folks are a very independent sort and don't always want to rely on someone else to speak for them. We can argue whether or not that's good or bad, but I will say that our recent successes in the last couple of decades is partly due to that lack of unionization in the South.
Okay. Did you want to respond to that? One more.
I just added that real quick. You know, we have low unionization rates here in the state of South Carolina, and I think that's generally seen as being favorable from a nationwide perspective. So, you know, there's a lot of question these days on the national level as to whether do we still need unions. You know, and there were a time decades ago where you did not have a national standard of safety or things for those employees. We've got a lot better national standards now than we had 40 or 50 years ago with regards to safety and how you treat your people and the age that your workforce has to be. You can't have children with things like that. So, you know, there's a big kind of question out there, do I still need to pay into a union or not? Quite frankly, you know, I think what we would rather see is just a business that has a good internal culture, that has good relationships between the people on the floor and the people in the executive offices. I think that does a business a lot better than needing to get the third-party representation in kind of like Nelson alluded to. And it's just healthier. It creates a better internal culture for the business as a whole.
There's a question in the back there. Yes, ma'am.
Just so we stay on task here, racial disparity, I want to make sure it's clear because we're moving about in a lot of different areas. And I know personally, because I work with low-income population, I've been doing that for quite some time. And we're also now setting up a program where we're going to engage with entrepreneurship, job development training, and mentoring. We're going to drill down on very specific areas, and I'm even working, trying to work closely with Wells Fargo Bank to come up with some more creative ways on how we're going to address that. Because when you talk about low income, you're talking about credit worthiness, you're talking about financial literacy, how to work closely with your local elected officials. That is not really something that has been fully explored in terms of better understanding how to be a better entrepreneur. So there's still a lot of spaces that we're trying to fill. But I don't want to get away from what I came here for, and that is to talk about the disparity, because it's huge. I see it every day in the workforce. So we need to stay on task with that to make sure that we're focusing on what the other major problem is, because I'm a transplant, but I've been here almost 10 years now. And I see racism, I see a lot of things that are going on. You talk about contractors, I know people who are in business. And when I moved here, or prior to moving here, I had a business called Ocean Crest Technologies, did well in California. I since sold the business primarily because I saw there was, my concern was trying to get contract work. And coming here to talk to, procurement was a struggle. And I did, I'm dealing with two situations, being a female, being African American. So I think we need to make sure we stay on point in that area and really explore that to Lee's plan that was discussed earlier, or really understanding that process. We need to really develop that, because there are a lot of disgruntled people out here. They're not happy, and I know they're talking about businesses that have come here. I wonder if all of those businesses, when you say Boeing and when you talk about BMW, where some of the people transferred to come here because there may have been a skills gap,